Hey there, I'm Tracy Rigdon, and this is the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. In this podcast, each episode is a journey through captivating interviews, engaging dialogues, and personal anecdotes that explore the depths of arts, culture, politics, and everything in between. My goal? To leave you inspired, informed, and entertained. Often random, but always relevant, always real, and practically nothing is off limits. So whether you're an art aficionado, a political junkie, or simply someone seeking a fresh perspective, this podcast is for you. Are you ready for this? Let's do it. Welcome back to the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. I have with me today the St. John's Riverkeeper, Lisa Rinaman. Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here.
It's all fun. Listen, some people may not know what in the world the St. John's Riverkeeper is and what the St. John's Riverkeeper does.
Well, every day is a different day when you're the St. John's Riverkeeper. We are part scientist, part lawyer, part educator, part activist. It's really whatever the river needs to make sure we, as a citizen advocacy group, does anything and everything we can to protect and restore the St. John's River, its tributaries, and its springs. We're very fortunate to be part of an association of waterkeepers around the world. There's about 350 of us. And there's 15 waterkeepers right here in Florida, and we work on state level issues as Waterkeepers Florida.
That's incredible. Now, as the St. John's Riverkeeper, now that's a pretty broad scope, so that goes well beyond Duval County, correct?
Absolutely. In fact, the St. John's River Watershed is our jurisdiction or our area of responsibility. And it's about 8,800 square miles. So it's a significantly large chunk of Florida. About 16% of the state of Florida falls within our jurisdiction. So we travel all over the watershed from Indian River County all the way north to Duval County.
That's a lot of ground to cover. I was talking with someone.
And a lot of water.
Yeah. I was talking with someone from Mayor Deegan's team the other day, and we brought up the subject of her commitment to resiliency in the area, and one of the areas of that concern was that of climate change and how that affects the city of Jacksonville, Duval County, and by gosh, the world at large for sure. But with Duval County, with Duval County having, I believe, well over 1,200 miles of shoreline, that includes the creeks and the river, of course, and the beach. That's a lot of shoreline, and those areas, the sea level and the sea level rise is going to cause some real problems.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at aerial maps of Jacksonville, and with all the creeks and tributaries and the river and wetlands, it's really a bunch of islands. And so, we are very fortunate to have so much water in Duval County, and it can be our greatest asset, but it can also be our greatest threat if we aren't more resilient, if we're not tackling climate change and our pollution issues.
And it's a major problem. There's going to be an estimated 2 to 4 foot sea level rise by the year 2025, and that could be devastating for a lot of waterfront properties, waterfront dwellers.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the St. John's River, it's a 310-mile river. And for 200 miles inland, so if you start here in Jacksonville, you go 200 miles south or upstream, the river bottom is below sea level. And so we see flooding impacts, 200 miles inland. So sea level rise is not just a threat to coastal Duval County, it stretches well inland.
And a lot of people are most definitely unaware of that. Uh, Now, in your role, Lisa, as the St. Johns Riverkeeper, uh, can you tell us what moments or experiences uh, that have had the most profound, impact on your dedication to advocating for the river's health?
Yeah, actually, if I could give two, one is I'm a mom. I have two boys that have grown up on the river, and really seeing the river's health through their eyes, because these next generations are gonna. They're going to either benefit from good decisions we make, or they're going to reap the consequences. So just really looking at it through children's eyes and working with children through our education program is always a good boost for the soul and the spirit. But more recently, we had launched an expedition where we actually traveled by boat, going to 15 different homeowners, riverfront homeowners locations, meeting them on their dock. And there's something quite magical and powerful about meeting with people via the river, going by river instead of going by car. And to
Sure.
realize that there are river lovers and people just like us that want to do good for our river, and really figuring out ways to connect all of this great energy so we can do good things.
That's beautiful. Actually, I can tell you, I've got children too. They're all adults now. But growing up in Jacksonville and growing up on the river, fishing with my father my whole life, working at the fish camps when I was young, working
Mm-hmm.
on some of the fishing boats and crab boats and shrimp boats. I did a lot of that when I was younger, and I remember it was funny. A couple of funny things talking about the kids. My my daughter, she's in her mid 30s now. But when she was a toddler, riding in the back of the car, and we'd go over a bridge, particularly the Dames Point Bridge. Uh, the power park used to have, well, it's not, the stacks aren't there anymore, but the power park
Right.
used to have the smoke coming out of them all the time. And I always told her two things. I always told her that those were the cloud makers, baby, and and I stuck with her. It stuck with her for decades. And and she would often talk about the water below the bridge and the water down there. And
Right.
when we went to and I always told her, I said, well, baby, that's Daddy's River. And
That's
and
great.
and she always called it Daddy's River. We'd go over a bridge and she said, look,
Oh,
Daddy's River. But it
that's
did.
awesome. I love it.
It did.
Hmm.
I mean, those kinds of things really do have an impact on people that grow up around the water.
Yeah.
And so what you guys do is incredible. It's much needed. Uh, how do you now? You talk about working with agencies and businesses and so forth. How do
Hmm.
you navigate? There's a balance, a delicate balance between holding regulatory agencies and polluters accountable while still fostering collaboration. With government entities, businesses, community leaders, and that kind of thing. That's got to be a balancing act.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say, we have a love-hate relationship with agencies, because, we obviously respect the work that they do, but,
Sure.
sometimes they're limited by bad policy or bad, laws or watered down, regulations. And so, so we always treat everything with respect. We try to, come to the table prepared and come with real data, and solutions. We don't show up just to complain. We show up to do something about whatever the threat may be. And so that's fostered a pretty good working relationships. Sometimes we agree to disagree and we have to, take legal action. But I had one of the best comments I had from an engineer with one of the agencies said, that they have to work within a box. And, the
Hmm.
Riverkeeper, one of our things we can do is expand that box and try to advocate for better policies so the agencies can do better work. We can also take their science and have a public conversation about it. A lot of times the agencies, they may have great science, but no one's talking about it because they're constrained by political or bureaucratic rules where we're not, limited to that. So we can take their work and actually get more recognition for the good, and then get more citizen advocacy for where things need to be improved.
That's great. Now, having been a senior staff member for Jacksonville mayors John Delaney and John Payton, how has your past experience in local government influenced your current advocacy work for environmental
Mhm.
initiatives?
Sure. I mean, it really laid the foundation for me to have an understanding personally about, it's never easy. There's always different constraints, whether it's financial constraints, political risk, constraints, or just timing. So, I think I'm more sympathetic to local governments as well as agencies on some of those limitations, but also, realizing you have to have different disciplines to come to the table to figure out a solution. It's like, it's not just one type of person that can get these great big things done that need to be done to fight climate change or protect the river. It really takes different people coming to the table, from engineers, scientists, educators, economists, policymakers, as well as the general public. We all have a voice, and that work, really helped me figure out how do you weave all that together, and not, look at the short term, but also, having an eye to the long term solutions.
Certainly, certainly. Could you possibly share maybe a specific success story or several where building consensus around an environmental issue led to a positive change for the St. Johns River?
So, let's see, building consensus around an issue. One of the, and this is kind of actually extended from my time at the city of Jacksonville. The under John Delaney, there was significant um, 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 a significant project focusing on the preservation project. Buying conservation land that not only protects our river and tributaries, but also provides open green space for people. And so, that was a wonderful project early on. And one of the things we're constantly doing now is protecting that land, because there are, unfortunately, some of these conservation easements are not protected as strong as, as well as we would hope. And so there was one of the conservation land projects down on Julington Creek that was under siege, and there was a developer wanting to take it over and swap it for other land. And we were able to rally the troops to come together from all different types of from user groups to come and make sure we stood up and protected that land. From high school students that like to do cross country running, to moms that take kids out, to people that just like to hike and do bird watching. And so that was and elected officials too that actually worked years ago to get the dollars. So that was a really exciting opportunity to protect something that we didn't even realize needed protecting again, but get all different groups and people. And people actually came across from the state, from all over the state, because they didn't want that precedent set. Right here, losing some really important conservation land on Julington Creek.
That's incredible. That's incredible. What are some of the most pressing challenges currently facing the St. Johns River, and how do you envision overcoming these challenges in the coming years?
Absolutely. One, it's there's all like local examples as well as watershed wide. Some of the things we're looking at here in Northeast Florida that we're extremely concerned about is saltwater intrusion. We're seeing not only water levels increase due to sea level rise, but as water levels increase, that also pushes more salt water further upstream. And that salt water is killing our submerged grasses and killing submerged trees. And these grasses are really important because they're the kidneys of the river, but they're also important habitat for our commercial and
Sure.
recreational fisheries. And so we're working together with a group of riverfront homeowners, as well as bass fishermen and scientists and elected officials, to document what's happening out in the river and focusing on ways to reduce different stressors to bring those grasses back and look for ways to increase freshwater flow. And one of the opportunities to do that is reuniting Silver Springs, the Ocklawaha, and the St. Johns River, and working with a coalition to get that restoration done, but also working with a local community in Putnam County where the dam is located that's blocking that natural flow, working with the community to invest in recreational amenities so more people have more access to the restored waterways, and economic incentives to offset any perception of loss due to losing a portion of that dam. And so really focusing on a more holistic approaches to these different types of solutions, but working with all different types of stakeholders and really trying to understand from different viewpoints, what the long-term situation looks like.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Ocklawaha and Silver Springs. As you're a founding member of Free the Ocklawaha River Coalition, correct?
We are, but I would like to say we recently renamed our coalition to Reunite the Rivers, because it's bigger than just the Ocklawaha. It's about 4 different ecosystems. So we did rename that coalition, but still working together with more than 60 organizations as well as the local community.
And that it works towards, like you said, reuniting with Silver Springs and the St. Johns River as the great Florida Riverway, as it were.
That's right.
Fascinating
That's right.
work.
And well, and there's been a challenge because the conversation's been focused on what will be lost with the Rodman Dam, and we're really focusing on expanding that conversation to what will be gained and working with the community to reimagine the dam as a destination point, but and focusing on what can be saved as well as expanded and improved. And so that's been a really interesting work in getting to spend a lot of time in different parts of the watershed that we haven't spent as much time historically. Another big issue is continues to be nutrient pollution, which drives these toxic blue-green algal blooms, and that's a watershed issue. We have work we're doing in the headwaters, trying to get better policy to reduce the amount of sewage sludge that's used on farmland,
Oh my
to
gosh,
working right
yes.
here in Jacksonville, and to get more septic tanks, offline. So that alone, trying to reduce the amount of sewage is a watershed-wide issue. We're working with local partners as well as other environmental conservation and citizen groups.
Very good, very good. And you mentioned several times the watershed areas. So considering your expertise on this subject, could you elaborate somewhat on the importance? And I think most of us could figure that out. The importance of preserving our watershed areas, and how does the health of these areas, directly impact the well-being of the St. Johns River and its surrounding ecosystems?
Sure. And, and really the river, it flows through the heart of Northeast Florida. And so our river's health drives our community health. It drives our economy. And since we're downstream from the rest of the river, everything that happens south of here in this watershed, it impacts water quality right in Duval County. And so it's real important we work upstream. We have members in Indian River County, Brevard County, Osceola County that work with us. We have a Middle Basin office that works in Central Florida area, Orange County, Seminole, Volusia. We're very excited to have a Putnam County advocate that works out of the Willatka on issues that are important to Putnam County. And all of that, impacts us right here in Jacksonville. Back when Hurricane Ian and Nicole came through, we didn't get the brunt of that storm, but we had flooding, all the way up here due to all the rain that fell in Central Florida. Not to mention the pollution that went in when they had sewage failures that made its way out here. So you have to look at all the connections to, understand how we can improve it, but also how it impacts us all.
It impacts everybody. It most certainly does. And I know you mentioned the salt. You mentioned the saltwater intrusion. I remember some time back when they're doing the dredging projects out towards the mouth of the river and deepening the canal, and there was some concern then that going too deep would be getting too close to the water, the aquifer.
Yeah, and there is a surficial aquifer in that area, and so they were concerned about that. Luckily, there's a pretty significant barrier to our deep aquifer, but that's not the case through the entire watershed. But we are seeing, significant saltwater intrusion that's in the surface water going further upstream that resulted from the dredging. And remember, we've been straightening and widening and deepening
Right.
the St. Johns River for more than 100 years. And all of that has created, a superhighway for larger boats, but also for the Atlantic Ocean to come further inland. And so since the dredging began 100 years ago, it's been documented that it's doubled the tide range. And so with that, you get higher water levels and you get higher salt content. We just met with the homeowner earlier today on the Ortega. He used to have great freshwater grass behind his house, and it's not there anymore because it's getting too salty. And so we've got to, one, stop any additional impact, but we need to, offset that salt water coming in because it can undermine our seafood industry as well as make our water pollution issues more because you don't have that biofiltration with those grasses.
Certainly. You've been involved in implementing a lot of river friendly policies. What advice would you give or do you have for other regions looking to enact similar policies that balance environmental conservation with economic development? As we were talking just now, development along the waterfronts and also the dredging and so forth. It's certainly an economic factor there, but we have to remember environmental conservation.
It's all a balance, and so there are really simple things that we all as individuals can do every day to be more river friendly. We have a whole river friendly program at stjohnsriverkeeper.org where you can learn about reducing or not using fertilizer. There's a lot of beautiful native plants. You don't have to use fertilizer and have a great, gorgeous yard. And you can use less water. That helps protect our aquifer. Cleaning supplies. If you're a boater, there's a whole boater river friendly way to do it. We also work with local governments to lead by example, so they're not spraying herbicide and excess fertilizer. There's fertilizer policies in place that every community should lead by example. And water conservation. In Central Florida in particular, within the St. Johns River watershed, we're overusing our aquifer. That reduces spring flow, which reduces fresh water in the St. Johns, that then is replaced by salt water. And so I think the most important thing is taking that holistic approach and looking at how it all connects, but also all of us realizing that small things add up if we're all working together on everyday practices. But also, if we unite our voices, then we can get really important policy changes at the local, state, and federal level of government.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will tell you, you're talking about the over fertilizing and things like that, and the chemicals used on lawns. I have long been one of those people that just does not care for St. Augustine grass. It's a water hog, and not because I don't like not because I hate mowing. It's it's not even a native grass. It was developed for sod purposes, and it is a grass a water hog.
Absolutely. And fertilizer too. And in fact,
Oh
Dr.
yeah.
Quint White here at Jacksonville University, he always says, if he was a benevolent dictator, he would ban and outlaw St. Augustine grass because it is just that bad. And I like to
It
say you
is.
plant native plants, you have lower maintenance, you have a lower pollution footprint, lower water use, and you have more time to go enjoy the river. And so I think it's real
Yep.
important we do that and have pollinators. There's things too that you can
Yep.
help plant that will not only protect the river but protect our earth. Because the climate change is threatening progress that we've made historically on cleaning up the river, and it's also making us more vulnerable to flooding, which makes us more vulnerable to pollution. So we need to protect our river
Yep.
and protect our earth, and luckily there's things that do both.
Yep. Yep. I moved away from Jacksonville several years ago, not because I don't like Jacksonville. I love Jacksonville. That's where all my business is. But I live in the woods out in Clay County, and literally in the woods.
Nice.
And so fortunately, I don't have a lot of lawn to mow. I do have a lot of woods to upkeep. Never use the sprinklers. Don't have to. I've got, and as you said, pollinators. I've got. Not only do I have flowers that I have to take care of, but I, I sow wildflower seeds out on the property every year, and
Wonderful.
and I don't have to water them. I don't have to take care of them. Wildflowers grow like crazy, just like they do on the highway. You know, they
Mhm.
throw those wildflowers down
Right.
the median in the highway. I do the same thing out here. I do it every year.
That's great. That's great. And I love it. You're driving down the highway, you see all these pops of color, and
Yeah,
it's good for our
yeah,
environment, it's good for wildlife, and it's welcoming. It's just, and so
yeah.
that's what I think, to stress, it's there's a win-win there. It's not, xeriscaping does not mean you need to have all rocks, and no, there's
Nope,
beautiful
nope.
plants you can have and wildflowers.
And not only that, if you still want to have a green looking lawn, without, xeriscaping or doing, the whole, wildflower thing like I do, uh,
Right.
you can completely, if you have a small yard, like most suburb yards, you could cover the whole yard with clover and never have to mow it. And it's
Yeah.
great
Oh,
for the
absolutely.
bees. It's great for the bees, and
Right.
it stays green, and you don't have to water it. It's a perfect ground cover.
Yeah, there's wonderful. The University of Florida, they call it a Florida friendly planting guide, and it has both
Yeah,
native plants and other plants that thrive in Florida conditions without irrigation and fertilizer. And if we all did that and committed to that, one, we would have gorgeous yards, but two,
yeah,
it would reduce pollution significantly.
yep, yep. Um, in your opinion, how can the media uh, and public be more effectively engaged to raise awareness about river-related issues that we talked about, fostering a greater sense of environmental stewardship?
Yeah, I think that's a challenging thing in today's time. There's so many different types of media outlets. It's getting
Yeah,
through,
yeah,
and getting, one of our challenges, to be real honest, is sometimes we're talking to the choir. How do we get beyond the choir and really start building relationships with all different stakeholders and groups. And so we've been really working towards that, and a lot of that's just getting out physically out in the communities. And I think for the medias, I think, we always try, kind of like when we go to the agencies, when we talk to the media, not only raising the issue, but also what can people do about it. Having that solution. We don't want to be all doom and gloom. We want to be focused on how do we come together as a community.
right.
And that's hard, as you know, Tracy, in a short soundbite, to get people motivated. We do things, we complement our social media and conversation with a brewery talk, where we show up and have a conversation over a beer, or,
Hmm.
there's a restaurant spot we go to when we're in Putnam County, because we know a lot of movers and shakers go, and they have conversations over coffee. So, showing up there to say hello. So I think it's building a sense of community and a connectiveness that we all crave, is really important. And figuring out a way to take a complex issue and make it conversational in a way that we can all talk
Hmm.
about over a beer, or when we're walking our dogs with our neighbors. But
Right.
then having something people can do. And all that's really hard to get in a 30-minute window or 30-second window.
Yeah. I know that all too well. Uh, uh,
Well,
I had
and what
mentioned,
as a follow up,
yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say real quick, I'm sorry, as a follow up, I think, one of the challenges too is getting people excited and motivated to do something before it's a crisis. It's much less
Sure.
expensive and easier to tackle if you can do it before it's a crisis. And that's another balancing act we're always having to deal with.
Yeah, all too often, people are more reactionary than being proactive.
Right. And if we try to talk about how bad it could be, then we're labeled as sensationalists, and we don't want to be, sensationalize an issue. But when the data is showing you that if we continue on this trajectory, it's going to be bad, we need to have that conversation. And I do see that, like with climate change, for example, and sea level rise, when Hurricane Irma came through, that was a wake up call. And, we were having
Yes.
a conversation in Florida today we wouldn't have had just 5 years ago. And so I think that's important to continue to build upon. But you have to have the communications in a digital format through the media, but also, getting together face to face, I think is really important to build not only a sense of trust, but also of connectivity that we need.
I was when I was speaking with Mayor Diggins' team this past week. We were talking about the arts community, which is going to get a lot of influx of. The arts community is going to start getting an influx of some of the grant money that the city has available. How do you see the role of art and creativity in raising awareness about environmental issues? And have you encountered any particularly impactful artistic expressions related to the St. Johns River?
Yeah, the St. Johns River has inspired so many amazing artists over the years.
Yep, it
And
has.
one of my dear friends and great artists is Jim Draper. And Jim Draper did a whole series of native plants, for example, just a gorgeous series of native plants. And now he has his new show, I think it's called Radical Naturalist. He's really focusing on getting people to understand that connectivity. But yeah, there's just so many artists that have captured beautiful scenes of wildlife and landscapes, from the river, which helps build, get people to value and appreciate it. But there also, you've seen scenes of more terrifying, potential
Yeah.
reality, especially with climate change. So I think it can raise awareness about what's at stake, but also what we value. And then in combining public art and public green space on the waterways, I think it's just another way to get people to come down to the river and celebrate, our culture as well as our natural amenities right here along the St. John's and throughout, its watershed.
It's to me, as I said, early on, I grew up on the river, whether it be for, you know, you know, just having fun or working on the river. I did both. And so
Right.
it meant a lot to it meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to me and my family, my children, and generations before me. And so it does make sense to take care of it. Um, I got one last question for you. Lisa.
Okay.
Before I turn you loose. Now, as somebody as deeply connected to the St. Johns River as yourself, um, how do you find hope and inspiration in your work, especially when faced with the challenges of environmental advocacy?
And that's an important part. I always like to say we want our river to be more resilient, but we have to be resilient as well. And unfortunately, the river itself is our inspiration. Just Friday, we were out in the river, chest deep in the water, working together with bass anglers on a submerged aquatic vegetation project, saving eelgrass together with some of our bass angler friends. So, whenever
That's
we
right.
have, you lose hope or inspiration, you go to a spring. I had a really bad legislative issue a couple of years ago, and I drove to Blue Springs and I sat out on Blue Springs and watched the water and figured it out. So I think just the water itself is our inspiration. and literally submerging ourselves with our friends and other folks that love the river as much as we do. Friday I had to go pick up my kids. I didn't want to leave because we were having so much fun working in the river with some of our new friends that we just met. So I think the river itself is inspiration. The only other thing too is, we have a full-time education program, and there's nothing better than seeing kids on a water taxi for the first time when they see dolphins. It's just, seeing the delight in that in kids' eyes, in submerging in the water.
Yep.
That's all we need for inspiration. Sometimes you need to do it multiple times a day. I won't lie, but we're very fortunate to do the work we do.
It's fabulous what you do. And you mentioned the dolphins. That was always one of my really favorite things when I used to live in the urban core. I lived right around the corner from Hemming Park for several years. And in the mornings, I would walk from that area over the bridge, the Main Street Bridge, and then down and back over the Acosta. And it was always, there was always something going on, whether it be a sailboat coming through or the dolphins, and that was my morning routine. I would walk the bridges, and it was like ground. It was like getting grounded. It was being, grounding.
Absolutely.
It's been a joy talking to you, Lisa, and I'm so glad that you do what you do, and I'm so glad that you could make it here to be with us. I'm going to provide the links in our blog post and on the description on the YouTube channel and so forth, all the links that people are going to need to get in touch with you guys at the Riverkeeper, St. John's Riverkeeper. And you're welcome to come. If you have any pressing issues you want to talk about the St. John's River, you're welcome to give me a shout, and you can come back on the program anytime.
That sounds great, Tracy. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We will see you.
All right. Take care.
Well, that's a wrap. Another fantastic episode of the podcast. You can find us on all the social media platforms, wherever you surf, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, Threads, wherever. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. And on our YouTube channel, don't forget to like, share, comment, and smash that subscribe button. If you're streaming audio for the podcast, you can find us wherever you get your favorite podcast programs. In the meantime, I like to tell everybody, take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time, peace.